Julie. Welcome to Saltier Politics. I'm really happy to see you. How are you doing?
I'm great. You've been traveling.
I was recently taking a side gig, and I ran a show in North Carolina for the Design Network called Couched with Carson Kressley. So that was a whole new experience and fun.
How's Carson Kressley? He seems cool.
He was hilarious. He also actually recently won an Emmy for RuPaul's Drag Race. So before the show, he'd be pumping up in his dressing room with RuPaul and Todrick Hall, different music, and it was really fun.
I gotta secretly, not so secretly, because I'm talking about it, love RuPaul's music. I love RuPaul.
It's so good.
It's
It's
so
actually
good.
my ringtone.
It is.
Sissy That Walk is my ringtone,
That's
and
hilarious.
I love it.
That's awesome.
You need little things to lighten your day.
I've been kind of in election hell. There's a bunch of legislative races that I'm working on, and I've been chained to my desk for the last, couple of weeks. What happened while you were gone? We had a little to do with Ronan Farrow, where he very graciously had a conversation with me and a few other women about NDAs and sort of.
Wait, I'm reading this book right now.
Yes.
I'm halfway,
How was
more
it?
than half. I'm enjoying the hell out of it. I actually downloaded an audiobook while I was on this trip and have been listening to it during all my runs
Right.
and all that. And the cover up is just
Cover up with what?
with Weinstein, how NBC kind of helped push that. Please tell me as much. I'm obsessed right now.
Oh, well, I haven't read the book. I have nothing to say about that. We just had a very nice discussion about my view that I think organizations generally that move on from allegations of sexual harassment to me or sexual assault or retaliation or any of that, how organizations that truly move on from that should not subject women to NDAs generally. And this applies to every organization, political organizations, media organizations. I've had to sign several NDAs in the course of my career. And generally, I'm not a fan of NDAs as it relates to bad behavior. I'm a fan of NDAs when it comes to proprietary information. Certainly, if I signed an NDA, let's say hypothetically you work for Donald Trump's presidential campaign, he made everybody sign NDAs. To me, there's a role for NDAs in terms of not disclosing polling information or strategy. But when it comes to bad behavior that you've witnessed in organizations, I think it's very important that people understand that NDAs just muzzle people, typically women. And so we had a nice discussion about that, and he was very understanding about that and was a good guy. So thank you, Ronan Farrow, for hearing me out on that subject, because it's one that's very near and dear to my heart with respect to several things. So that was the big event this week for me. And short of that, I really don't have any travel plans coming up. How about you now that you got back from North Carolina?
I am just working my butt off with regular work.
Yeah, you and me both. God, it's been super busy. It's like I feel like the summer went away and now it's getting into craziness, and the holidays cannot come soon enough so that we can take a little break as well.
Right. It's much like New York weather. There's no in between, let's get right into it phase. Now it'll just get cold.
Totally.
Freezing.
You're absolutely right.
All right. Due to popular demand, we're going to be adding a mini clapback-esque segment to the podcast. Julie, let's get right into it.
Oh God! All right, so
because they're really good.
Yeah, some of these are really good. I'm so glad the clapback is back, and thank you to everybody for commenting on the website and telling us that you like the clapback segment, because now, thanks to you, it is back by popular demand. So, Marco Rubio of Florida, your home state senator, Emily, you own him.
Oh, stop.
Marco Rubio of Emily's home state of Florida. Stop. Let me stress that again. Tweeted something on October 24th at 8:37 a.m. This is Marco Rubio. Two things are true. There's only been one man ever who was always right and deserves blind loyalty, and his name was Jesus. And no matter what a Republican does, the left will never be fair to them. What they want is Republicans who will douse themselves in kerosene and light a match.
I feel like right now I'm hitting the launch button. And Julie,
so I responded, two things are true. Marco Rubio tweets about Jesus in order to distract from the fact that he has offered the president blind loyalty despite what he knows are the president's many impeachable offenses, and sticking it to the libs is more important than doing his job. So what drives me crazy is Marco Rubio always tweets scripture. And that's great, and I'm very happy that he does that, except that sometimes it seems like a big subtweet to Donald Trump. So, Marco Rubio, rather than being passive-aggressive and subtweeting Donald Trump, you might just want to call him out, like directly. Like, I don't blindly worship Donald Trump because he's not Jesus, and he doesn't deserve it, and here's how I don't blindly worship him. Exhibit A, I think he's wrong on Ukraine. Exhibit B, I think he's wrong on Syria. Exhibit C, I think he's wrong to be shaking down Joe Biden. I don't care. Exhibit D, I don't like his socks. Whatever you think you're not showing blind loyalty to, Marco Rubio, maybe call him out as opposed to subtweeting him about Jesus.
I would like to point out Exhibit A through Z, though, which is a spine, and it seems like...
He has none.
Yeah.
And then somebody literally writes back, well, you're right on the second point, which I guess is sticking to the libs is more important than doing his job. Somebody named Snickers at DLingo73 wrote, oh no, I'm sorry. John Cranston, True Patriot, 16. Right back, well, you're right on the second point, kudos, which is sticking it to the libs is more important than anything else, than doing your job.
Wait, I found a better one.
What's that?
Julie constantly tweets about Republicans because of her OCD, and now her Russian anti-religion roots are not only showing, but screaming.
So...
Which, I can't.
So
it's so bad.
It's so bad. OCD.
I think meaning like
I'm
criticizing Republicans.
Like I've got
that's
I've got like obsessive compulsive disorder on criticizing Republicans. Like some people wash their hands all the time, and I just criticize Republicans. He's not wrong. I might be critical of Republicans. I don't know. I just basically defended Kellyanne Conway on this podcast,
right?
But I might be critical of Republicans because they don't show any spine to a crazy man who is subverting everything Marco Rubio stood for. Remember when Marco Rubio was this like foreign policy hawk and basically said that, I don't know, you have to do more abroad and be engaged. Like everything that he stood for, Donald Trump has trampled on. And little Marco, which is the only thing that I'll defend a Republican. Donald Trump was right, little Marco. And secondly, my Russian anti-religion roots are not only showing but screaming.
I remember you not eating on Yom Kippur.
Yeah, buddy, you try starving for 25 hours on Yom Kippur, and then Emily and I had it up for dinner afterwards, and I broke my fast with some vodka like a good Russian.
I know.
Before I had any food, and you tried doing that on an empty stomach, buddy, thanks to religion.
Literally, we just proved that person wrong.
We did, but I will also say this is not a knock on Jesus.
Right.
It is a knock on people who use Jesus in order to detract from their jobs. I mean, if Marco Rubio wants to go and join the priesthood, I'm sure the Catholic Church would welcome him with open arms. But he is a United States senator. We don't live in a theocracy. So do your job. I'm not suggesting that he doesn't talk about scripture. I'm saying that he consistently uses scripture and Jesus to constantly subtweet Donald Trump, which is like the coward's way out. And Emily, I don't know what's going on in your home state and why the people of Florida put up with this man, but something's got to give down there because this is insane. Either get somebody who's going to just come out there and say, like Lindsey Graham does, I am Donald Trump's.
Well, that's our governor, DeSantis.
Yeah, but I mean, either come out and just say that. Either come out and say, I am going to do whatever Donald Trump says because he's right about everything and I am wrong about everything, Lindsey Graham, that everything I've ever stood for, I have been wrong about. Jesus Christ and Donald Trump have shown me the truth, the way, and the light, and no, from now on, I will follow everything Donald Trump says, which is effectively how he is voting and what he's doing. Or call him out. Just call him out. It's not that hard. I called out Barack Obama all the time when I was at Fox. I know people don't believe that, but I'm sure I could find clip after clip that showed that I did. I certainly did on Russia when I thought he was wrong. And what I don't understand is why Marco Rubio doesn't do that. You're a co-equal branch of government, Senator Rubio. Are you truly worried that he's going to fund a primary against you? I mean, when the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. Martin Luther King paraphrased that statement. I truly believe it. It's a long career for you, Marco Rubio. And when you are up again, Donald Trump's not going to be that popular anymore, if he's even still in office. So just don't worry about it. Or what's more, I mean, if you truly are that religious and you truly believe that there's something more important than your job, than politics, then you have to understand that your morals and your beliefs as you feel that Jesus espouses them do not comport with Donald Trump. So stand up and say so. I mean, I don't want to look into Marco Rubio's heart. I don't want to be, I don't like psychoanalyzing people based on their religion. But it seems to me that if there are things that Marco Rubio said deserve blind loyalty, and that is Jesus Christ things, that there's one person that deserves blind loyalty, and that's Jesus Christ, then stop showing it to Donald Trump. Just say it. His name is Donald Trump. That's who you're talking about. And sticking it to the libs is not more important. By the way, liberals do not want Republicans to douse themselves on fire and kerosene. They just, or at least I'll speak for myself, I just want you to at least stand for what you stood for. Oh, I don't know, in the Republican primaries when you ran against Donald Trump. Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, all you people. Just stand for that. You know this man is toxic. So just say so. If enough of you say so, he can't go after all of you. Strength in numbers. Get a backbone. Get together. Go to some AA type group meeting and talk about it, but do something because you know it's wrong. That's the part that drives me crazy. They know it's wrong. Donald Trump is a dope, as I keep saying. He doesn't even realize what he's doing. They know what they're doing, and they don't care. They'd rather put their own career. And in Marco Rubio's case, he's acting like a coward, and it's absurd and it's embarrassing, and he's got to stop. So there's my clap back.
A woman to that.
Thank you. All right. So, what's going on this week?
Well, I wanted a tweet. I wanted to start with a tweet you did defending Jessica Tarlov.
I love Jessie Tarlov.
But pretty much the tweet was criticizing Jess's tone as opposed to the content.
Actually, it was Jessie's voice. Which I don't find anything wrong with. But having been in Jessie's shoes, literally, not her shoes, but literally been, on that couch and outnumbered, which is what... Ironically, she was being criticized by Juanita Broaddrick. And let me just preface this by saying the following. Juanita Broaddrick made serious rape allegations against Bill Clinton. I didn't really focus on, it's not that I didn't focus on them at the time that she made them, but I was younger and I think much more naive about how things work. They actually sound credible to me. So this is not a slam at Juanita Broaddrick and everything she's gone through. But Juanita Broaddrick is in the public eye because of what happened to her, and she's been very outspoken about it. And to me, if you're a woman, this doesn't apply to women, but it especially galls me when women do it to other women. If you don't like what comes out of Jessie Tarlov's mouth on Outnumbered, which is what Juanita Broaddrick, I think, should have been critical of, then feel free to criticize her. God knows when I sat on that Outnumbered couch, I got hateful tweet after hateful tweet. But what I find so incredibly offensive is when people criticize other people and women criticize other women for their looks or the sound of their voice or their hair or whatever reason. As you know, because you worked on Outnumbered, I really gave Governor Christie of New Jersey, a very hard time when I was on that couch, almost every day. What I never did was be critical of Chris Christie's looks. I really don't like Donald Trump. I'm very critical of Donald Trump. I have never been critical of Donald Trump's looks. And the reason for that is because I don't think that has anything to do with anything. I think you're born the way you're born. And what you choose to do with your looks, if you have any choice at all, is up to you. And that shouldn't reflect on what people think about you. If you're a supermodel and you're super hot, I don't think that's a credit to you or your personality. And if you're a politician and you're really overweight or you're really unattractive, that should not be a detriment to you. Jessie is fantastic on every level. And I don't just say that because she and I agree politically, which we do. I say that because she's truly one of the good guys and good people out there in the world. She's very kind. She's very sweet. As there are plenty of Republicans who work at Fox. This is not a Jessie Tarlov hagiography because we agree politically. But for Juanita Broaddrick to go after her voice is really inappropriate. I don't think Juanita Broaddrick would want anybody to go after her looks.
Right.
Even if she were a supermodel, I don't think she'd want anybody to go after her looks one way or the other. There's always something somebody can find that's wrong about the way you look. And when you are on that couch on Outnumbered, which is filmed, as you know, Emily, in a very specific way to make you look much more attractive than you probably are in real life.
Shots, yep.
Yeah, but I mean, look, Fox does a fantastic job with their hair and makeup and their wardrobe, and it shows. I mean, it really transforms people into just, they do a very great job. But inevitably, there's always going to be somebody who's going to nitpick every part of you. And it really bounced off of me. I never really cared. Look, some people thought I was too thin. Then some people thought I was too fat. Then some people thought my hair was too long. Some people thought my hair was too short. I wasn't blonde enough. I was too blonde. Like, I mean, there's something that somebody's going to find about you. So I never really had it bother me or let it bother me. But I do think it says much more about you, Juanita Broaddrick, as the critic. When you're sitting there criticizing Jessie Tarloff, you don't have a problem with Jessie Tarloff's voice. You have a problem with what Jessie Tarloff is saying. You have a problem with her figurative voice. Go ahead and criticize her. Fair game. Jessie puts herself out there every day by being on TV. Fair game to go after Jessica Tarloff. But
and it goes to the larger issue of discrediting women just based on their looks and not the content of what they're saying or doing, which is needs to stop, and especially from other women.
It really does, and especially, Juanita Broaddrick had something very important to report. She reported that she got raped by a man who at the time was not the president of the United States, but became the president of the United States, and she reported that. That's a very serious allegation. When women allege that Donald Trump was harassing them or raped them. I mean, one of Donald Trump's responses was, well, like, look at her, like I'd ever like touch her with a 10-foot pole. I'm paraphrasing, but it was something about her looks. We know that rape is not about looks or attraction. We know it's about power. So it really is pretty irrelevant what a woman looks like. But I don't think Juanita Broaddrick would have appreciated, nor should she have, for people pushing back against her saying, well, I mean, why would Bill Clinton ever touch her with a 10-foot pole? You don't do that. You just don't do that.
That's what Trump has been doing.
That's what Trump has been doing to women. You don't do that, Juanita Broaddrick. I mean, come on. And I say that as somebody who listened to your allegations really carefully and sympathizes with you. But you don't do that. You just don't do that to other women. And I really, truly hope that she takes that to heart. And if she wants to criticize Jessica Tarloff or criticize anybody who's on TV, criticize them on the basis of what they are saying, not on the basis of what they look like or they sound like.
Agreed. All right, moving on to our next one, which also has to do with appearance. Right now in front of the Supreme Court, it was recently argued RG and GR Harris Funeral Homes, Inc. versus the Equal Opportunity Commission, a case that will decide if transgender people are entitled to sex-based protections under Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. So pretty much an employee was fired from a funeral home for being transgender. Advocates for the woman who was fired are fighting for a broader view of the Title VII and cite evolving case law that says sexual orientation and gender identity are inherently tied to a worker's sex. I completely agree with this, but what I thought was interesting was the broader implications brought up by this Teen Vogue article, not having people dress as their gender. So what the Trump administration is arguing in its brief is that employers can insist that men and women dress in a manner that aligns with stereotypical understandings of gender. The author of the article and her colleagues represented 3 girls who attended a North Carolina public charter school that required girls to wear skirts. The school allowed boys to wear pants, but argued that allowing girls to do so would undermine its goal of promoting, quote, chivalry and, quote, mutual respect between boys and girls. The women eventually secured a federal court ruling that the skirts requirement violated the Equal Protections Clause, and then the court recognized that forcing girls to dress in traditionally feminine manner had no effect on promoting respect between students, and noted that for several decades it has been socially acceptable for girls and women to wear pants. So Julie, pretty much same gender stereotypes hurt all of us, and also you having a son in school. I mean, how do you think, the broader aspect of this?
It's very interesting because my son goes to an all-boys school, and they've been grappling, obviously, as everybody has, with transgender issues. For example, what happens if somebody starts to identify as a girl in the school. And the conclusion that they came to is that they are in fact an all-boys school, but they will work with that student. They're not going to kick somebody out because that person decides to identify as a girl, which I think is a great solution. And if that girl then decides that she doesn't want to attend a school that is an all-boys school, then I guess that she can make that decision. But nevertheless, if somebody in my son's school wants to put on a skirt, I mean, they have a dress code, so I don't know if that fulfills a dress code. But let's put it this way: if my 7-year-old son decided tomorrow that he wanted to wear dresses or he wanted to wear skirts, great. It's a self-expression thing to me, and he could choose to do that for any number of reasons. He can identify as a girl, which my son. I don't think is in the cards for him. But if it were, that's fine. Or he could just choose to do it because he finds that skirts are cool and he wants to wear a skirt. And if he wants to do that, that's totally cool with me too. And I think it's a shame. And I'll give you a better example. Forget my son. We're sitting in my office right now, and Ian, who works with me, who works for me in this capacity. I never say that, but in this capacity, it's relevant. If Ian wanted to show up here wearing a skirt, which would be hilarious because you've seen Ian. But if Ian wanted to show up wearing a skirt, God bless. I don't care. Go wear a skirt. I mean, what do I care what Ian does?
Right.
As long as he does his job. I don't care what he looks like. I don't care what he dresses like. I don't care what he does. Provided that Ian, by the way, for those people who don't know, is probably 6'4", and I'm not sure what his weight is, but I'm not sure that they have skirts that would cover up that are Ian sized. If Ian wanted to do that, that's great.
Exactly.
And I don't care. And I don't care why. I don't know why people do care.
Exactly. And I just don't. I think it's a whole status quo issue with the Trump administration trying to maintain certain power and give certain limitations to women.
Melania wears pants. I mean, she does.
That's true.
Ivanka wears pants. I mean, why can Ivanka Trump show up at the White House? Not just Ivanka, Kellyanne Conway, whoever. Why can they show up at the White House wearing pants? I mean,
right.
What's the big deal? I mean, I understand having a dress code in the sense that some places feel like they want their employees to wear ties or business attire. But what that business attire is from a gender perspective is irrelevant.
Right. It doesn't impact the work. In fact, it makes the worker more comfortable when they can wear what they're comfortable wearing.
Yeah. I mean, look, I wasn't going to show up wearing, a tie-dye when I was on air at Fox, but I don't really think it mattered whether I wore pants or a dress. I mean, back when I was there, actually, it did matter. But I don't understand. I mean, I truly don't get what the issue here is. And shame on the Trump administration. I mean, come on. It's like every time they have the opportunity to do the wrong thing, they take it.
Right.
Like does somebody sit around and say, what is the most offensive thing to the largest number of people? Let's do it. And you know why we're going to do it? Just because we can. To stick it to the libs or to be iconoclasts or whatever reason. It's just annoying. Just cut it out.
That's it. And yeah. So let's go on. Let's move on because pretty much it's trash. So next subject is, which Julie, I know you're going to go crazy on, which I'm very excited to hear about. So right now the Dems are discussing articles of impeachment against Trump while the GOP is ignoring evidence of quid pro quo with Ukraine and are attacking the Democrats' investigation into the matter, especially Senator Graham. He's angry because he thinks the Dems are hurting the country based on how they're going about the investigation. So he's fighting the process when you don't like what's being revealed.
I mean, this would be like, I don't know, Senator Graham. What if somebody tried to murder what if somebody committed murder? And then you're like, oh, let's not investigate the murder. Let's investigate how the police investigated the murder. I mean, this is so absurd. And so by the way,
ignoring the murder.
Yeah, you're ignoring the murder. Don't look at the dead body. Let's talk about how the police are looking at the dead body. Senator Graham, if you recall, Emily, maybe you don't, because how old were you in 98? You were a little...
8.
Yeah, you were 8. I was not, so I remember this well. I was actually working for a congressman at the time. Senator Graham, when he was in the House, when he was Congressman Graham, was one of the leaders, one of the House prosecutors in the Clinton trial So the House, impeached Bill Clinton, and then he was acquitted in the Senate trial. But the prosecution was prosecuted in the Senate by members of the House. And one of the lead prosecutors was then Congressman Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham thought it was A-OK to remove a president from office for lying about a consensual sexual affair under oath. Lindsey Graham does not think it's A-OK to even question why the president of the United States is essentially allowing more people to die in Ukraine, contrary to Congress's wishes, including Senator Graham's, in order to get dirt on behalf of his campaign. And what is so striking to me is that this is Lindsey Graham. Remember, Lindsey Graham was the one screaming about the Ukrainians need aid. We got to stand up to Putin. We've got to stand up for the Kurds. We've got to stand, like Lindsey Graham was the king, along with John McCain at the time, of Barack Obama's not doing enough to help the Ukrainians, and we got to help the Ukrainians and the Russians. And by the way, he was right. I think Obama did not do enough to help Ukraine at the time. Did not send arms to them as he should have. But what is interesting to me is he no longer cares about that. There are people, 13,000 Ukrainians have died since Russians essentially appropriated a great chunk of their land in Crimea and effectively have made eastern Ukraine part of the war zone. And let's be very clear, and Lindsey Graham knows this because he's not a dummy. If Russia is successful in Ukraine, this will be the first land grab in Europe since World War II. And they're not going to stop. Vladimir Putin has said the biggest geopolitical tragedy of the 20th century, not the Holocaust, not World War II, it was the dissolution of the Soviet Union, which is a striking thing to say. So there were 15 Soviet republics. Russia was one, the largest. Ukraine was another one, and there are 13 more after that. Why would he stop at just Ukraine? Why not move on to Belarus next? Why not move on to the Baltics? Why not move on to the other former Soviet republics and reconstitute the Soviet Union? And in fact, what you will have, if Vladimir Putin's allowed to have his way, is not just a new Cold War, but why even stop there? Look what the Soviets tried to do in Eastern Europe. Look what they did in Poland. Look what they did in then Czechoslovakia. I mean, I can go on. We've seen this movie before. And Lindsey Graham knows this because he's not a dope. He actually, unlike Donald Trump, I think, knows his history and knows where this is going. So for Lindsey Graham to ignore this and for Lindsey Graham to suddenly start talking about how it's okay for the president to do this, to hold up, there's no quid pro quo. Of course there's a quid pro quo. Of course there was. But how it's okay for the president to hold up aid to the Ukrainians in exchange for dirt on Joe Biden and Joe Biden's son is absurd. Absurd. And Lindsey Graham, shame on you. You know better. I get that you want to win re-election. I get that you were worried about your numbers in the Republican primary when you were critical of Trump. I get that you've completely flipped in order to save your own butt in 2020. But aren't some things more important?
It really should be, because I really think, as you said, that Trump is using Ukraine kind of as a litmus test. How far can he get? And
sure. And so is Putin. I mean, Putin's using Ukraine as a litmus test. And who put this idea in Trump's head that there's some imaginary server? By the way, have these people never heard of the cloud? Like, there's no server, dopes. Everything's on a cloud right now. But there's some imaginary server that the Ukrainians were the ones that hacked into the DNC and somehow stole their server, which is in Ukraine. Who does that dumb theory benefit? And by the way, theory discredited by Trump's own intelligence services. I don't know how many intelligence agencies. So who believes this? Donald Trump. Who put this dumb idea in his head that it wasn't the Russians, but the Ukrainians? Who benefits from Ukraine being the bad cop and not Russia? Oh, I don't know. I can think of one person. His name is Vladimir Putin. And Lindsey Graham, you are playing right into his hands. I don't know what John McCain would be saying right now if he were still alive. I hope he would not be as craven as Lindsey Graham. I hope he wouldn't be. But it's like the minute that John McCain left the Senate, Lindsey Graham, some on switch happened to Lindsey Graham. Like, he became just a lunatic. And again, unfortunately, he knows better. He knows better. And he's craven, and he's opportunistic. And I cannot think of, I mean, Donald Trump's a dope, so I'm not disgusted with him because he is what he is. You can't change, you can't change him. But Lindsey Graham just disgusts me. Lindsey Graham's like approaching, he may be exceeding Mitch McConnell level disgust on my part.
I support that. So what are you salty about? As if that didn't get you salty enough.
I am salty. I'm going to actually defend Kellyanne Conway. Here's what I'm salty about.
Okay.
Kellyanne Conway, let me preface by saying I've known her a very, very, very long time. And the Kellyanne Conway that I have seen operating in the White House the last couple of years and also on the campaign, I don't personally recognize, but okay. Let me put that aside. I don't approve of her methods. I don't approve of her threatening journalists. I don't approve of her lying on TV. I don't approve of her telling a journalist that interviewed her from the Washington Examiner that she was going to go after her and explore her personal life. Don't approve of any of that. But I understand where Kellyanne Conway's frustration is, and this is based on a Washington Examiner transcript that came out in the last few days about Kellyanne Conway having a conversation with the Washington Examiner and castigating this reporter for saying, in the context of Kellyanne Conway running for, potentially being in the running for being the next chief of staff of the White House, that her husband, George Conway's tweets were problematic is not the word, but basically saying, she has to contend with the fact that her husband's a never Trumper and says negative things about her, saying negative things about her boss, Donald Trump. I don't know why this constant sticking George Conway's opinions into professional stories about Kellyanne Conway is relevant. I would hope that Kellyanne Conway and any woman can stand on her own merits and her own 2 feet and not be judged in the context of what her husband is saying or doing. In the same way that George Conway, with whom I happen to agree, should not be judged in the context of being Mr. Kellyanne Conway. He's an incredibly accomplished man and a lawyer in his own right. And what I don't like is this notion that we have to worry about what George Conway is saying as it relates to Kellyanne Conway's career. There are many, many, many reasons why she would be an awful chief of staff. But her husband's tweets are not one of them. And what her husband is doing is not one of them. And this whole constant psychoanalysis of the Conway marriage is fine if you're reading People magazine, which I don't think devotes time to it, or celebrity gossip, but it shouldn't affect your professional, it shouldn't reflect on you professionally. And let her be judged on how she has done her job as a professional woman, an accomplished woman, and not be judged by the fact that her husband is undermining her boss on Twitter every day, because that's her husband. Let him do it. He has a First Amendment right to do it. She has a First Amendment right to say what she wants to say. I really hope that's not held against her. And I really hope that she's not held against her husband. But, their marriage should be left up to them. And I really wish women especially, would stop being judged in the context of their husbands. That's what I'm salty about. All
right. Well, this week, I love that Education Secretary Betsy DeVos was held in contempt of court recently for violating a previous order to stop collecting on loans from students who attended the now defunct Corinthian College. The judge in the case found that DeVos showed, quote, minimal effort to stop collecting on the loans. And it impacted roughly 16,000 people who were affected by the department's continued collections. What I'm salty about is that it goes to how out of touch DeVos is and how she has no empathy for how crippling the debt is to so many students.
Betsy DeVos got into this for one reason and one reason only: to turn for-profit schools into for-profit schools and to decimate public school systems. I mean, she, in any other administration, she'd be the worst cabinet member, but,
right.
I mean, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, and she may be the one-eyed man because there's so many, so many bad cabinet secretaries. I just can't wait for this administration to be done.
I know.
I'm so tired. Aren't you tired?
I'm tired. And it's like, again, though, it's just so many of my friends, like, they can't do jobs that they truly love because they need to be in a job to get out of debt. And I'm almost 30 and have been out of school for a while now. And it really makes me mad.
Well, and that's college. Think about people who then incur law school debt.
Exactly.
I mean, I think about what it will take for my son to go. We've talked about this before, but he's 7. What it will take for my son in 11 years to start college. I'm budgeting. I mean, this is absurd. I mean, think about this number. I am budgeting $100,000 a year for him to go to college to have no debt when he gets out.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. Who's got that kind of money? I mean, like, who's got that kind of money?
Right. And it's just absurd to think about, and just that the long-term effects that these strategies that they're doing give to students and to kids who grow up to be adults. And it's makes me really, really salty.
And as you know, there's only one type of loan that cannot be discharged in a bankruptcy, and that's student debt. I don't know if you know that.
I didn't.
So that's the worst part, is that even if you declare bankruptcy, that cannot be discharged.
Well, and the salt pile gets higher.
Yeah. So I don't know what people do. I mean, honestly, I was very lucky. I had a almost full ride to college, but then in grad school, I had a little bit of debt, but I discharged it pretty quickly. Like I got rid of it pretty quickly. But that was a long time ago when college was like $25,000 a year, and I didn't have to pay it anyway because I had loans and not loans, I had scholarships and whatever else. But I don't know. I have no idea how people, Emily, can afford to send their kids to college now. And I keep going back to this. I did a poll, I don't know, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, that showed that this is of middle class, self-reported middle class voters, right? So these are not people who are poor. They report themselves as being in the middle class. This is the first time I saw a poll a few years ago where they no longer think that a college education is attainable for the middle class.
That's really...
It was possibly the most depressing data point I think I have ever seen.
That's really scary because, again, the way out of poverty is education.
I mean, I don't care what you think, and I know a lot of people are going to listen to this and say, well, you need to go to college, and college is a ripoff, and it's a liberal brainwashing, Statistically speaking, again, empirical data, not my feelings. Statistically speaking, the ticket out of poverty is a college education. Education is the most important thing you can have to make money and to be able to afford to have a lifestyle. Not to buy planes and yachts, but truly to just have a normal middle class lifestyle. And that's no longer attainable, according to this focus group and these polls that I saw, that they no longer believe that that's attainable. And it's stuck with me. I think this poll is about 5 years old now, and of all the polling that I've done since then, and I look at polls virtually on a daily basis, that data point has stuck with me to this day. I think it's just so depressing. So Betsy DeVos, congratulations for making the situation that much harder.
And that's why voting this year will be so important.
2020. That's true. 2020. Although if you live in certain states, New Jersey, Kentucky, I believe Virginia, go vote. There's an election November 5th. Just vote. I don't care who you vote for. Just turn out to vote. And that's actually something I'm going to be focused on a lot next year. I am going to do everything I can to mobilize as many people as possible to register and to vote. Because the more people vote, the better off they are.
Truth. All right.
Have a great weekend, everybody.